Okay, so I just want to check first. Do we have any young people in the audience? Now, the World Health Organization classifies young people from the age of 10 to 25. So I just want to check. Anyone?
I wish.
Anyone at all? No? Okay, just checking. Then they could kind of fact check our presentation as we work through it. Since the period of adolescence has been talked about, every generation has said the same thing about the next, that they are a weak echo of the previous one. Most of these views stem from fear and uncertainty that we as the older generation have not done a good enough job, that we haven't given the future the best chance, and so we criticize and we reach back for how things were done in the good old days. But in fact, every new generation has made our world better, has challenged the status quo, and has shifted and shaped the way we think and operate as a society. Today, our young people are growing up passionate about climate change, gender equality, and reducing mental health stigma.
It's this passion and constant questioning of the norms that we love about adolescents. It's their energy that changes the world.
Remember your first teen crush? Clouds of cheap body spray, filling the school jacks, trying to get the shift. Tissue stuffed down your bra cause one of the lads said you had pancake tits. Your first taste of unrequited love. The actual pain. It's just a phase. Body pulsing with hormones, the angry pimples on your face almost as angry as you. Very moody these days. Freedom to go anywhere with nowhere to go. Moved on from the local streets, local shops, the local. All ears huddled around the speaker on your phone. Body heat and laughter keeping you warm. The street lights, your spotlight, till it's time to go home. Naggins in the field, trying to see straight, the first lungful of a cigarette. The absolute fear of looking stupid in front of your mates. What they think of you is everything. It's just a phase. The constant buzz of phone notifications, group chats behind your back. See that pic you were tagged in? Stay you Friday night. Tightrope. Anxiety. It's just a phase. Head down in the books, must get an A. How the fuck should I know the speed of train X? Every exam, the one that will get you to that place, that course, that college. Curl up on your bed, so much flying through your head. Mom and Dad try to talk to you. What can they say? It's just a phase.
Being a teenager is just a phase. One of the most important phases of a person's life. Anything is possible. That's why, at SOAR, we give thousands of young people in schools across Ireland the platform to confront their personal challenges, so nothing gets in the way of their extraordinary potential.
All right, so what are adolescents today trying to do? We often wonder. Well, they're actually trying to do exactly what all of us did at the same phase in life. The tasks that adolescents face in developing from childhood to adulthood really haven't changed that much, although it certainly looks different with technology and with what's available today. Just as all of us did, they're experiencing rapid and profound physical changes, waking up in the middle of the night with growth pains, stretch marks, from day to day, not recognizing their own bodies, shoulders broadening, hips broadening, hairs sprouting all over the place. It's quite a disruptive experience. I'm sure most of us wouldn't go back for any sum of money. So it's only normal that adolescents are quite self-focused, focused on their bodies, on being normal, comparing themselves to each other and to celebrities, to everyone around them. A recent study has found that the self-image of 9-year-olds in Ireland in 2016, 75% of them were happy with the way that they looked. Compare that to only 49% of 15 to 17-year-olds. That's quite a profound change, and really attributable to puberty and to the changes that people are going through. the same time, they're learning, to manage their sexuality, their sexual feelings, what it means to be a male or a female in their society. They're developing the ability to have more abstract and less concrete thinking, becoming able to recognize the complexity of the world around them. Things aren't just good or bad, right or wrong. They're shades of gray. This corresponds, funnily enough, with the transition to secondary school. And if you think about how we don't all hit adolescence or puberty or these developmental milestones at the exact same point. Some people are early, some people are late, some people started school late, some people started school early. If the demands become greater the instant you set foot in secondary school and you're not quite there developmentally, what a huge impact that can have on everything going forward then. Your adjustment socially, your adjustment academically, your peer group, how you feel about yourself, your ability to perform academically. We often talk with young people on the unit about that transition from primary to secondary school. And very commonly, for people who have run into trouble with mental health difficulties, they had a pretty rough one. Everything was fine in primary school, parents will tell me. And then secondary school, friends scattered in all directions, new peer groups were formed, they were smaller than everybody else or bigger or whatever, and that really has impacted them significantly moving forward. At the same time, they're able to have more complex emotional experiences. They start to question beliefs from childhood. Up to this point, adolescents, generally, if you ask them, who did you vote for in the election, or what was your vote in the referendum, whatever it is that they say is kind of what the family is saying, what the family believes. In adolescence, they're seeking to individuate, to figure out what do they think, who are they. And so sometimes that starts with, I don't know who I am, but I'm definitely not you. And so they reject everything from home straight away, and then they look to the peer group, and they're kind of comparing and assessing family views, adults that they know, and their peers' views, and trying to sort it through for themselves to answer that quintessential question: who am I, and what do I believe? Peer relationships, one of the stereotypes of adolescence is how important their peers are to them. They no longer want to be with family. They don't want to go to family gatherings or family, weddings or away with the family. They want to be with their peers. And you see them, walking down the street of Stillorgan, Donnybrook, in town, wherever it is that you live, walking in gangs of 2 to 6 to 8, kind of wearing a little uniform, all looking almost exactly alike, but not quite. And the peer group becomes so important in adolescence because it's part of their attempt to become independent, to separate from family, but they're not quite ready to do it and stand on their own 2 feet, so they sort of scaffold each other. They dress kind of exactly alike and do all the same things, flip the hair the exact same way as they're developing. Now they do, get a little bit more comfortable in their own skin as this goes on, luckily. Peer groups also shift from those based on, who lives on the lane, who likes to kick a ball around, who's in the local GA club, to groups of young people who share common beliefs and ideas. So with that transition to secondary school as well, you often see a complete change in the peer group based on the new abilities that they have for thinking and assessing things. We also see the other famous stereotype for adolescence is this risk-taking, the risky behavior, the poor decision-making, as we like to say as adults. Believe it or not, they do gradually develop a set of self-controls as they move into young adulthood, and they do learn to manage multiple demands. But recent brain research has actually shown there's a reason why adolescents think differently about consequences or don't think about the consequences. So the frontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed in any of us until about 25 years of age. So when they've done brain imaging and compared an adolescent brain to an adult brain in certain tasks, they've seen that in many areas the adolescent brain is a fully formed adult brain. But this particular area, it isn't. And this area is responsible for thinking through the consequences of one's actions, weighing out the pros and cons, So therefore, you often will ask a teenager, what were you thinking when they've done something particularly dangerous or risky? They weren't. They don't know. They can't explain it. And this is why. So, it's not carelessness. It's not that they don't want to. It's just their brain's not fully developed there. They're also not as...
I have to say, on behalf of all the young people that aren't here tonight, they would say it was really cool, it was fun, and nothing bad actually happened.
They're also not as able as adults to look at things from somebody else's perspective. So that's another interesting thing to keep in mind when you're talking to young people. Another kind of key thing about adolescents is they internally and then externally in their behavior really vacillate back and forth between kind of a longing for the simple life as children, to be dependent, to be cared for, to have everything clear and make sense, for their parents always to be right and the bad guys are always wrong, and if you do the right thing you get the reward and that sort of thing. And then the desire to be independent, to go to that all-night party, to roam the streets, to not have a curfew, to, be allowed access to alcohol after getting their junior cert results or whatever. They are going back and forth internally and with their behavior and their demands. So adolescents are often described as wanting all the rights of adulthood, but none of the responsibilities. Sure, wouldn't we all take that if we could? So as adults in the lives of young people, it really is a time of walking that fine line and balancing between allowing, fostering, even actively encouraging autonomy and independence in our young people. We do eventually want them to move out and live independently and function as adults. And we do also want to maintain that connection with the adults in their lives. So it is a back and forth. As much as it feels that way, if you're involved with a young person or the parent of young people, that is what's going on.
So, as we've heard already, adolescence has not drastically changed in terms of what the brain and body are trying to achieve. But it certainly has changed in terms of how young people do this. So I want to talk a little bit about how young people engage in the world in 2019, how what they find important and meaningful to them at the moment, and why that is so. We also need to note here that every next generation has engaged in the world in a way that the previous generation has set it up for them to engage. So we are responsible for how young people are engaging with the world. And we need to note that. And I say that because I think often media, schools, every aspect of the world will kind of condemn teenagers for their behaviors. And on reflection, we've allowed them to partake in these particular ways. So we need to stop condemning them for their behaviors. It's extremely important that we explore with them safe and healthy ways to interact with the world. Smartphones are obviously the modern way for young people to connect. They connect socially, they connect sexually, playfully, independently, academically, and cognitively. 90% of young people in Ireland have a smartphone. That's huge. They also identify that this is their most important device. I'm not sure if everyone in the audience would also identify that it's their most important device, but I'd say a large proportion of us would. Where 50 years ago adolescents were expected to be outside playing with their friends until dark, they were expected to be seen but not heard. They were expected to be sneaking out and meeting up with friends, going to parties, walking everywhere, and that's including to the payphone to call their friends. They were climbing trees, they were drinking in fields, and I think they're still doing that. Young people are now influenced by both the draw of the online social world and a generation of parents who are more cautious. Both parents are working often. There's smaller nuclear families, and extended families are usually further away. So it's not a matter of go to your aunties or go to your grandmas after school, or such and such is picking you up. We have a more transient world where people move around and it's a lot smaller, and so often there isn't access to those kinds of supports. These factors and more, including the modern day fast-paced lives that we live, have contributed to young people being more connected than ever before, yet lacking in meaningful and physical connections to their real world. Whereas parents once felt that their children were safe within their rooms or at home, now the outside world follows them into their room, into their homes, into their rooms, via the internet and their devices. While young people are often at home more and with friends less, adults actually have less visibility of what they are up to and what they're being exposed to, as it is all happening online.
A quick fun fact, 60% of Irish teenagers believe that cyberbullying is worse than face-to-face bullying. 26% of Irish teenagers have experienced cyberbullying, and 85% report knowing of it happening to someone else. Think about that. Even if it hasn't happened to somebody that you know that's in your life, they know people, friends, acquaintances, where it is happening. So it's a very real threat. If it hasn't happened yet, they're often wondering, when will it happen? How do I avoid this? What am I doing that will or will not make me a target of this? And again, can happen not just on the schoolyard, not just on the walk home from school, but in your own home, in their bedrooms, where you think that they're safe and protected and happy. And that is a big change from when we were young. Another fun fact is Irish smartphone users currently look at their phones 55 times a day on average. And that's down from 57 times last year. So maybe we're making progress. And this includes after they have gone up to their beds and gotten into bed for the night. They're still checking their phones or receiving notifications or whatever else. And among young people, nighttime use is even more common, with 60% checking their devices in the small hours of the night. So we talk a lot about adolescents and how much sleep they need, and how the schools start too early and they're always too tired. And we're adding this in to impact on their sleep. And not only is it waking them up, but it's potentially, we don't know what's coming in the middle of the night. We don't know what they're being exposed to. They might get a breakup message. They might get a message that so-and-so just self-harmed or is running away from home, or is suicidal, or whatever else is going on in their peer group. And that obviously has an impact on them. And, again, they're in our homes, they're in their bedrooms, safe and sound, tucked into bed. And most of the time the adults have no idea what's going on.
I'd just like to note that 55 times per day is for the general Irish population. So it's not just for young people. And something that we will talk about is that when thinking and talking about screen use or online social media platforms with teenagers, we need to be mindful of what we do ourselves as the people role modeling in their lives. Because they're hugely impressionable, and they will kind of pick up on what we're doing, and they will throw it back in your face. Well, you do it, so why can't I? As my mum used to say, do as I say, not as I do. But I don't know if that will work all the time. So just a bit of a slide on what else are they into, what else are they filling their time with. Now, keeping in mind that on average, outside of school time, teenagers in Ireland spend 3 hours on their screens. So on top of whatever they're doing at school, which often a lot of it is screen heavy, after school they're spending about another 3 hours, often a lot more on screens. So a lot of these extra activities are based on the internet. So they're streaming I don't know if anyone in the audience knows much about video streaming, but often they're not just watching Netflix. They're the biggest social media platform that young people use is YouTube, and they use it very actively. A lot of the things they watch are other young people talking to them about important political issues, talking to them about music, talking to them about makeup. So they're watching other young people do things. Often they're watching other young people play video games, which I still find it hard to get my head around, but that's like a really big aspect of YouTube streaming for them. Celebrities, teens are still obsessed with celebrities, and this connects really to their search for identity and also for fitting in. I mean, it's interesting though, some of the articles I read was that they're connecting more with celebrities who are facing down the same sorts of problems that they are. So, I mean, an example is that Selena Gomez recently spoke about her mental health difficulties, and young people were able to relate to it. Emma Watson is another sort of icon for young people in that she advocates for human rights and gender equality. Yes, young people are still obsessed with food. It's a huge stage of physical growth for them, and food remains like number one in their priority list of things they need to do. This can hit both extremes, as we see a rise in obesity and also a large amount of young people restricting in order to achieve the sort of perfect body that the media has portrayed. So we do see both of those things. McDonald's and chocolate are still like number one foods that teenagers are keen on eating. Gaming, so this is actually, I think, probably one of the most misunderstood areas that young people engage in. It's actually huge. It's a way of playing, and it's a way of hanging out, especially after school or on weekends. So they use gaming as a way of social connection, where they don't have to actually be together, but they can be in their bedrooms individually and meet online as they play Fortnite or Call of Duty or Minecraft or whatever it is. So it I know that probably sounds awful, but to them it's amazing. They can literally go into their bedroom, parents aren't worried about them, and they can be with their friends. There are obviously a lot of risk factors to that and a lot of safety concerns, but for them, when talking with them about it, we have to understand it's huge. It's a big part of their lives, and we don't understand it nearly as much as we should, I don't think. So surprisingly, reading is still popular. Harry Potter, Twilight, manga, anime, comic books, they've all made a comeback. Fantasy fiction, and we would notice that working with the young people on the ward, they would read a lot, often turn to reading out of not having their smartphones and sort of looking for things to do in their boredom, which is great. And some young people just will always be avid readers, and so it is still there.
Yeah, we don't allow smartphones on the unit, and we found that the adolescents, they initially come in protesting quite a bit, but very quickly, they don't miss it at all. They actually enjoy interacting in real life with their peers, reading, the slower pace, the lack of pressure to be constantly on and responding and liking things and posting things. And we use it as a platform to work with families and the young people as they're planning their discharge, to take a second look at how do they want to manage this when they leave here, because they'll all identify. I haven't met a single one in 2 years that wouldn't identify it as being a relief, making life easier. And before they came in, it would have been a constant source of conflict at home. So taking a look at how they can transition back home and take some of that with them, some of that new awareness of how to manage their devices.
Brands, once again, this remains as a desire to be accepted and admired by peers. So looking the same, dressing the same, having all the cool stuff. As Karen mentioned, if you see a group of young people, they are dressed nearly identically. They want to be individuals, but cannot socially afford to be too different from their peers.
Sport and exercise is also very important socially and physically. It can act as a powerful motivator for behavior. So often young people who are involved in sports teams will avoid, to some extent, drugs or alcohol misuse. They'll spend more time training in the gym, worrying about being fit for the next match, and can avoid some of the pitfalls of adolescence in that way. It is also a place where the enhanced physical and intellectual capabilities come into play. They're suddenly faster, stronger, bigger, more able to execute the strategy of a game maybe they've always loved because they understand it better. At the same time, it's a prime place for comparing themselves to others. Again, the boy hitting puberty later than everybody else or earlier, what does that do to self-esteem and performance? But it is a key field for young people to interact with each other and with themselves and their development.
Okay, so I've just put some terms up there that you might have some questions about. I'm not sure, but I'm just going to go to the common teen dating lingo. Now, I had to Google some of these terms because I wasn't entirely too sure what they mean. Want to meet IRL, that means in real life. I'm not going to explain Netflix and chill. What are we? Let's define the relationship today. So DTR is define the relationship. She deep liked my entire page. So deep liking is when someone looks at someone's Instagram or Facebook profile and goes back a few years and accidentally likes something, and then the person gets a notification that pretty much you've been stalked and someone's been looking deeply into your...
My mother does this all the time.
into your... I actually think it's a thing that old people do a lot. Not that you're... Oh, yeah, your mum is old.
My mother. She's old.
She is so thirsty is a timid way, a probably more aggressive way of saying they're into you. He left me on read again. This is a technique where a young person, or where you'll get a message or you'll send a message and then you'll see that the person has read it, but they've not responded. So it might be a crush and they've read the message, but they haven't responded. So he left me on read again, and he's ghosting me. That just means you'll set something up and you'll not turn up to it. So I'll text you tonight. You don't get the text. Or young people do it for they could do it for job interviews or anything. It's called ghosting. So you just don't turn up. You set something up and you don't turn up. But anyway, as Karen spoke about earlier, adolescence is a time of physical and psychological development, with peer relationships taking the front stage. This is certainly true and has always been true. The way that young people interact and connect with each other is very different in today's world. It's a crucial time where defining gender identity and sexual orientation is happening, whether they like it or not, and whether we like it or not. It is also almost all done online with a small amount of face-to-face. The face-to-face does increase with age and with confidence. So likes on Instagram are equivalent to chatting in the breaks at school, and just as chats can intensify to hand-holding and kissing and more, and I won't bore you with the details, likes can intensify to DMCs online, deep and meaningful conversations, romantic messages, and then into the more dangerous area of sexting. In 2018, a study found that 13% of Irish secondary school students had sent a nude or semi-nude picture or video of themselves. 7% had sent a nude of themselves to someone they met online, someone they haven't even met face to face. 15% have shared or showed a friend a nude that was sent to them by someone else. So when young people are maybe thinking they're sending a nude to a romantic partner, there's no guarantee that they are not going to forward that picture onto anyone, upload it to any site, and the next thing, the young person's walking into school and every single person has seen a picture of them where they're vulnerable, where they're naked, where they may be doing something quite degrading. So it's a really large area and a large percentage of people that are engaging in these activities. 14% sexted someone who is not their partner, so they're not even doing anything romantic, just maybe trying to get there, and they're sending them a nude photo of themselves. Males are more likely than females to engage in all sexting behaviors, with 17% of males sending a nude photo or video of themselves compared to 9% of females. This does increase with age. So what the study found was that 4% of first years had sent a sext, whereas 34% of sixth years in Ireland had sent a sext. Now, if you have a classroom of 30 students, that is 10 people in that class that have sent a nude or semi-nude photo or video of themselves to someone else. That's a really, really large proportion of young people of 16 to 18 years old. And these images, you can't get them back. Once they're out on the internet, that's them. They're gone. And you know, the longer term implications of these things is that what a lot of employers do these days, and they shouldn't, but you can just type a name into Google and you can see what comes up. And if there is something out there that associates your name with an image of you that is nude or indecent, it can pop up. So there are detrimental long-term effects to these things. And young people, well, we're not having the conversations with them that we need to be having to help them to understand these implications. So as I said, this is a serious area of a young person's life, and we often think that it happens, but it won't happen to anyone I know, it won't happen under my roof or within my family, but it does. It happens everywhere, it's happening all the time. This is, as I said, this is an important conversation to have with the young people in your life. If they do find themselves in a difficult situation, you want them to be able to come to you, and you want them to know that you're going to respond in a way that is supportive and open to the difficulties that they're facing, rather than, well, why did you do that? As we mentioned before, they thought it was cool and fun and they weren't going to get hurt.
They weren't thinking.
They weren't thinking.
Everyone else is doing it. And they think that their parents have no idea that this is even happening out there, or be so shocked if they knew. So they're scared to come to adults for guidance.
So as Karen points out often to the parents that we talk to in our parent group, under new laws, any person carrying naked images of a minor on their phone can be charged with possession of child pornography. And sending any image means you can be charged with distribution of child pornography. So there are really severe legal consequences to what young people are doing. And as I said, I don't think they understand. I don't think we even understand as an older generation the impacts of these things. But we need to talk about it, and that's why we're here tonight.
I think it's really important to talk to young people ahead of time, that, you know, to let them know when they have a smartphone or a device that they will receive at some point a photo from somebody that they know, or they'll be shown a photo by someone that they know, and how you would hope that they would handle it, so that when it happens, you know, they've thought about it, you know, they'll be like, oh, Mom, no, this is terrible. But they've thought about it, you know, that they understand that you would hope that they would delete it, they wouldn't share it. They certainly wouldn't keep it on their phone. They wouldn't pass it around or put it on social media. And why? Kind of what your reasoning is, what your belief system is, so that they're prepared, because it will happen more and more. It's becoming the norm.
Now, this need to meet people and connect with others, even strangers online, and then to meet them in real life, is actually a way for adolescents to meet people outside of the family in order to enhance their social network. Now, this is an evolutionary mechanism. It's designed to ensure that once a person reaches adulthood, they can leave the family, once probably a tribe, and they can go and spread out and hopefully meet new partners. So it actually is something that is ingrained and wired into them. And you know what? We have set them up with the most accessible and simple means to do this, the internet. Okay, but it's not all scary and it's not all negative. The development of romantic relationships in adolescence, though intense and with emotional ups and downs, actually has meaning and they are very important. These feelings and experiences are leading young people towards a deeper capacity to care, share, and develop intimate relationships. So what's really important is that they go through this phase and they learn how to negotiate relationships within intimate relationships. And even though it's an emotional storm and it's heartbreaking, like absolutely heartbreaking, that first relationship breakup. Can everyone remember their first heartbreak? Yeah, it might have been like a TV show finishing and, you know, like the love of your life never coming on screen again. It could be a real life relationship. It might have been a friendship that was very intense and had been throughout, you know, thick and thin, or what had appeared to be thick and thin. And at the time, your mum's saying it was only 6 months, but, you know, for you it was an eternity and your world has fallen to pieces. So those experiences are very important for young people to have because they teach them how to negotiate intense emotions and intense relationships, and also what they see. And we'll talk throughout this, but we will talk a little bit more to it, that what they see and how they see parents or any adults in their life negotiate romantic or intimate relationships is how they will often engage in them themselves. And so it's very important that we model respect for self and for others, kindness and also protection, so that they know when to protect themselves and they don't end up in emotionally or physically or sexually abusive relationships. My last note here is that it's also normal for adolescents to have no interest in romantic relationships until their late teens or early 20s. So, you know, don't go away and shake any teenagers and be like, are you thinking about sex? Because, you know, they might not be, they might not know, they might not want to talk about it. They probably definitely don't want to talk about it. But it's, you know, it can happen later in life, and it, as with walking, as with running, as with being ready for school, everything happens at different stages.
So you can take a look at this slide. The risk and protective factors, similar to the tasks of adolescence, have not really changed all that much over time, despite looking different, as we've discussed, due to society and the world changing. There's always the child, the family, their school environment, life events, social environment around them. All of these things come into play. When working with young people, we're always looking at the risk and protective factors currently at play in their lives and how we can help shape them in ways that help them to safely navigate adolescence and young adulthood. Some factors are environmental, some are internal to the young person, and it's how these interact with each other that is important. And there's always the possibility of reducing risk factors and enhancing protective factors to create positive change for a young person and their family. So what do adolescents need from us, the adults in their lives? They need, more than anything, supportive relationships with adults. It doesn't have to be parents. If they won't hear a word you have to say, it can be grandparents, it can be aunts, uncles, family friends, a coach, a teacher. It could be their friends' parents who are much cooler than you are. But having supportive relationships with adults is linked with lower risk of substance abuse, depression, and delinquency, as well as with higher levels of self-reliance, better school performance, and successful future relationships. Another thing that's hugely important is knowing where they are and who they're with as best you can. Again, I know that transition from primary to secondary school, the primary school peer group where you knew all the parents and all the kids since they were 5, scatters, they go to 4 or 5 different secondary schools. They meet new kids from all around the town, even you don't know their parents. And parents will often talk to me about how hard it is to get to know, because your teenager doesn't want you to know their friends. You're embarrassing. It's not like you go on a play date with them anymore to meet the other parents. But it is really important to at least know the friends and have contact numbers for the parents, if at all possible. My mom always used to say to me, I need to know where to start looking if you don't come home. And even when I was an adolescent, that kind of made sense. I did want her to know where to start looking if something bad happened. So research has shown that having some knowledge of where they are and who they're with, and the activities they're engaged in is linked to lower risk of drug and alcohol use, depression, early sexual activity, victimization, and delinquency. So it's hugely important. It's worth the effort. In addition to food, clothing, and shelter, teens need adults to support their pro-social activities, and that could include helping to source activities, trainings, resources, support within the community. All of this will help prepare them to enter into adulthood. So this could be sports, this could be chess, this could be, Comic-Con, if that's what they're into. It can be anything, So sometimes young people are into so many things, and it's just about facilitating, it's about giving lifts, it's about showing up to support them at their matches, being the team mom or the team dad or whatever it is that they need. Other times your teen might be at a loss and not really connecting into anything at all, and then you would step in kind of to help scaffold them in finding something that they're interested in, engaging in it with them even. Some of the chess tournaments locally will have an adult section and a young person section at the same time. Some of the tennis clubs, will have, adults and young people kind of playing doubles against other pairs of adults and young people. Engaging with them in their activities, either kind of as a support on the side, as a bystander, as a facilitator, or even as an active partner, depending on what the need is. Teens who have adults in their life that model appropriate behavior, as Kim was mentioning, have better skills and attitudes regarding achievement, employment, health habits, individuality, relationships, communication, the list goes on. They've been watching us since they were born, and they're studying us all the time. They know us better than we know ourselves, practically. So whatever it is that you're doing, in your relationships with others, how you're being treated, how you're treating others, how you're, consuming alcohol or cigarettes or going to work or calling out sick or whatever it is that you're doing, they've been watching and taking notes. And this is kind of, generally speaking, what they're going to think is normal. So it's really important to keep that in mind and to try to be a good role model.
It's actually
like us.
It's actually astounding when you're sitting in a meeting with parents and a young person will sort of say, oh yeah, no, Dad does this, and the parents just turn around and they're absolutely shocked that the young person has noticed this minute detail, and the parents are, oh no, that's not how it happens. No, it is. And they are watching and they know how families operate. And that would be every single time we meet with parents and young people, something like that would come up.
So this is the link that I mentioned earlier about the adolescent brain and development. It's about 15 minutes long, so we don't have time to share it, but I wanted to put it up here, and I'll leave it up after the talk if anyone wants to take note of it. It's really good. We use it in one of our parent groups on the tasks of adolescence that we run for the parents of the young people in Tunisia, but it's a good one.
So I suppose tonight we hold hope for the young people that are taking on the challenges of the modern day world. And we hope that you leave here this evening with a more complex understanding of adolescence and the young people in your lives. So thank you.
Thank you.